and welcome back to my channel where I like to review, recommend, and research books. Now, I mostly focus on historical fiction, nonfiction, and true crime, but sometimes I do like to explore other genres as well. So if you love books and history, or you just want to listen to something you probably never heard about before, definitely subscribe to my channel. All right, today I want to talk about World War II fiction and nonfiction books. Now, as somebody that reads mostly historical fiction books, my historical fiction journey actually started with World War II books. This was something that I only read for almost 2 years straight. I could not get enough of it. And I just have read so many books. It's probably hard to say how many I have read. I've read some popular ones, and then I've read some that are not so popular and probably that you have never heard of. Now, when there are thousands and thousands of these World War II books out there, I want to recommend some books that are actually worth your time. So let's get started. So I actually have a mix of fiction and nonfiction to recommend. I have several books to go through, so let's go through them. So I'm actually going to start with my fiction recommendations. So this first one, Salt to the Sea by Ruta Sepetys, I think is how you say her name. Now, this is about the infamous Wilhelm ship that was sank during World War II. It is actually the greatest maritime disaster in history. Now, you really have never heard of this because it happened during war, so a lot of people didn't hear about it at all, but about 9,000 people perished on this. Now, this story is told by a few different perspectives, and it's about a group of strangers coming together from all different backgrounds, and a lot of them have some secrets to hide, and they find each other on their way across Europe trying to get to safety, which was to get to the ship of Wilhelm, and then it was going to take them to safety. And they end up getting on the Wilhelm, but obviously things don't go that well. Now, I really enjoyed this book. It was a very fast read for me. It is very fast paced. I absolutely love this book. Now, this next book, I can't believe I've never read it before. I did not read it until recently, and I've heard so many people rave about it, and I finally got around to reading it. The Hotel on Corner of Bitter and Sweet by Jamie Ford. Now, this book, I absolutely love it. So this book takes place in the 1940s in Seattle. Now, this is obviously during the time of kind of towards the beginning of World War II. Now, Henry, he is a young boy who is Chinese. Now, he goes to an all-white American school. Now, he is the only Asian kid in this entire school except for one other student named Kiko. She is Japanese. Now, obviously, once Pearl Harbor happened, all these Japanese people were rounded up across America and put into camps to basically wait out for the war. Now, him and Kiko develop a great friendship that goes a little bit further than that. And then it kind of forwards into his later life when he's an adult, and you always wonder what happened between him and Kiko and what happened to Kiko in general. This is a fantastic read. This has a lot to do with betrayal, friendship, love. There's just so much that happens in this book, and I just absolutely fell in love with this, so I highly recommend this one. Now, this next book is much more adventurous, and it is based off of a true story. Beneath the Scarlet Sky by Mark Sullivan. Now, this one I read a couple years ago, and it is a pretty thick book, but it has a lot of action that is in it. This is not a slow-paced book. Now, this is based off of a boy who grew up in Italy. Now, he would help Jews across the mountains to try to get them to safety, but unfortunately, he was to join the German army, which most Italian men had to at the time. They really didn't have a choice. So he was working for a very high-ranking Nazi officer, but he uses that to his advantage. Now, this deals with a lot of people, that really hated him for working for the Nazis, but they didn't realize that he had a completely different purpose. Now, this is a fantastic read. Like I said, it's very adventurous, and there's a lot that happens in this book, but I highly recommend this one as well. All right, now this next book is part of the series. I've not read the complete series, but this one really stood out to me the most. The Lilac Girls. Now, this is based off of, unfortunately, the female experiments at Ravensbrück, or just, on majority of the women that were in camps at this time. Now this follows several different young women that get into Ravensbrück together, and they form a very tight friendship, and about what happens to them there and how this friendship gets them through the day. It is a beautiful story, very, very sad and very disturbing sometimes as well. But I really, really liked this book. It is just such a good book about friendship and having the courage to keep going. Great read. All right, now my next 3 reads are actually by the same exact author. So I'm gonna start with the one that I read years ago that is still my #1 World War II historical fiction that I have ever read, The Alice Network. I read this one years ago and I have recommended it to so many people and everybody loves it. Now this is about a really, really badass female actually in World War I. Now this takes place a little bit of World War I and World War II. Now something about female spy books, they just really, really dragged me in, and I loved this one. Now this is about a woman who is trying to find her cousin that went missing during World War II in England. And she stumbles across this old grouchy woman and come to find out that this woman was a spy during World War I. So this follows her journey as a spy and what she had to do to get information from the Germans. And it's just a lot of things that happen in this book. It is a fantastic read. It is very fast paced, cunning. I loved the main character in this. She is just so ornery and such a grouch, but she was also a badass too. So I absolutely love this book. Now the next Kate Quinn book that I just recently read, The Diamond Eye. Now this is about a Russian sniper that is a female during World War II. Now this is actually based off of a real person. Her name was Nina, or Lady Death. She was responsible for many, many, many men's death, and because she became so famous for being a female sniper, she was actually sent to the US to be I guess you could say a propaganda, to try to get the US to join the Red Army during World War II to open a second front against the Germans. Now this has a little bit of a mystery to it because when she's in the US, there is someone that is trying to set her up as well. So it has a little bit of mystery to it as well. But it also has love, friendship, betrayal. It has several other things that happen in it. But I absolutely really loved this book. Now my last Kate Quinn recommendation is going to be one that I also just recently read, The Huntress. Whew, this book, super fast paced, super adventurous. There is so much in this book. It is absolutely insane. And Kate Quinn made me fall in love with a female Russian bomber pilot. Holy crap, this book is amazing. Now this follows a woman who, like I said, was a female bomber, and she grew up in Siberia, out in the middle of nowhere, and she always had dreams to be something different. So she decides she wants to start flying, and she becomes a very, very good pilot and joins a bunch of women who go to war and are bomber pilots. Now, this book is told by her perspective and a couple of other people. Now, it's also told by Ian, who was a war photographer, Jordan, who is just a young girl who, was in high school, wanted to be a photographer. And somehow these 3 come together to hunt down the Huntress. Now, the Huntress was a horrible, horrible woman that was responsible for many atrocities during World War II. So it takes these people to come together to hunt her down. Oh, so good. Love this book. A lot of gripping the edge of your seat while reading this because you're like, I have to know what happens next. That is this book. Love it. Now, this next book is probably one of the most popular World War II historical fiction books, Little Liar. I really, really enjoyed this, and I'm glad that it lived up to the hype. Now, this follows a young teenage boy who never tells a lie. Now, he is also a Jew, and one day the Nazis come knocking on his family's door, and so he actually hides while his family is taken away. Now, he's found very quickly. Now, an officer sees him and makes him basically his pet, and finds out that this kid never tells a lie, so he uses that to his advantage. So he sticks this boy on the train platform to tell everybody that they are going to go to a new place. It's lovely there. You're going to have a job, a home, everything. You're just moving away. That's all this is. Unfortunately, he didn't find out until it was too late that where this train was going with his family on board. So he spends the rest of his life basically trying to find his family, what happened to him, and basically to atone for his sins. So this book is all about truth, lies, betrayal, family, love. It has so much that happens in this book, and it also is told by a few other different perspectives. One of a Nazi officer, one of a woman that actually jumped from the train, and one from his own brother who sees him as a betrayer. So this is a fantastic read, a little bit of a slower paced book, and it doesn't really go too deep into the war really because it covers several years, but still a great read. Now these next few books that are still fiction, you probably have never even heard of. I found these as hidden gems and I absolutely love them. Now the first one's going to be Angels of the Pacific. Now this is about women, specifically nurses in the Philippines, who one day the Japanese army comes in and takes over their camp and puts them in POW camps. Now this book is also told by the perspective of a young Filipino girl who tries to help these nurses in the POW camp as best as she can. So it's about survival, friendship, and just so much happens in this book, and I absolutely love it. I cannot believe no one ever talks about this. This was such a hidden gem I found at Costco, and I loved it. Absolutely love this book. Now this next book is about a young Jewish girl that has a talent that saves her life. The Girl from Berlin. Now she is a young girl who knows how to play the violin very well. Her father is in a major orchestra who is also Jew as well. Now during this time, obviously the Jews were getting rounded up everywhere, but they saw her talent better than anybody. So she was saved from going to the camps because of her talent. Now she plays for Nazi officers and even the big dog himself. So it's about her coming to terms with, her talent is what saved her life, but didn't save her family. This is a fantastic read. This book, fantastic. Now the last book I'm going to recommend that is fiction, Once We Were Brothers. Now this one kind of falls a little bit on the same side of like Beneath the Scarlet Sky, where it's a lot of betrayal. But this is about two boys that grow up as best friends, and they end up on the opposite sides of the war because one is a Jew and the other one becomes a Nazi. And so this is about their friendship developing and then what fell apart, and then when they became enemies. Now this follows through several years, and the Jew later in life getting his revenge on him and making it known who his ex-friend was. So this is about the truth and trying to find evidence of this person is this horrible person, or is he? So this is a fantastic read as well. That is all of my fiction recommendations, and now I'm going to get into my nonfiction. So this first one is a little bit of a hidden gem, The Brothers of Auschwitz. Now this is about obviously two brothers that go all throughout Auschwitz together. This is a fantastic read. I read this one several years ago, and I'll be honest, I don't remember a whole lot about it, but I do remember that it is a really good book, so I'm just asking you to trust me on this one. But this one is a great read, and so much happens between these boys and how getting through this terrible, terrible time in their lives and how they survived because they had each other. Great read. Now this next book, when I say trigger warning on absolutely everything, this is, I read so many different types of topics and stuff, but this book probably takes the cake on as far as how disturbing it is, but I also enjoyed reading about it. The Rape of Nanking. I know this book is extremely dark. It is very, very graphic, but this is about the Japanese army and what they did in China and the places that they overtook. Yikes. I can only recommend this to a few people, so if you have a strong stomach, I would recommend this book. But this book goes into detail about what they did to these people and what they've been doing for years. Now, what's really, really sad is the author of this book actually ended up unaliving herself after writing this book. I don't know if it's because of what she found out, but it's still very, very sad. But this book, it's got a lot of details in it. It is definitely part of history, but this is probably one of the darkest books I could ever recommend. Now, this next one is actually told by a pretty famous person, and when I say famous, I mean famous in the World War II sense. I Escaped Auschwitz. Now, I have actually read several books based off of this man, Rudolf Vrba, but this is actually from his own mouth. Now, he is a Polish person that actually got himself thrown into Auschwitz intentionally because at this point in time, he had only heard rumors of the atrocities that were happening here, and he was part of the resistance. So what better way to find out than to get yourself thrown in there? And that is exactly what he did. He got himself thrown in there, worked his way through the ranks, and found out exactly what was happening in Auschwitz, and then he escapes. And when he escapes, he tells the world what is happening, but the sad part is it fell on deaf ears. But this is a great read, very fast paced, and it's an incredible story. An absolute incredible story of a very, very brave man that tried to do the right thing. Now, this next book is definitely, if you like more about what happens on the front of war, Ghost Soldiers. Now, this is about a POW camp that the men were put in during World War II in the Philippines. Now, this was about a POW camp that we really didn't know about, that our soldiers were in, and then we team up with the Philippines to try to get our own prisoners out of this camp that was ran by the Japanese. Now, this goes into detail as far as like how they found out this information, how they came up with a battle plan, what their strategies were, and how this operation went down. And it is a fantastic read, and it also is very adventurous, and it's also just a lot of information about a lot of the things that go on in the background of like trying to come up with plans and ideas of how to, you know, break a bunch of people out of a prison, or how to break a bunch of people out of a place and how dangerous it was. So a great read if you like soldiers' point of view. Now, this next book was a hidden gem that I actually found at a thrift store. The Boy Who Followed His Father to Auschwitz. Holy moly, this is such a great story. This is about obviously a young Jewish boy and his father that get sent to Auschwitz, and they were one of the very first few prisoners that were there, and how they survived many, many years and the death march together. Wow, this is such like an emotional story. How they were able to survive not just that long, but to survive together. Great story. Absolutely fantastic. I remember after reading this, I like had to like process everything because it was just so incredible. Highly, highly recommend this book. Now, this next book is probably the most famous World War II book, Night. I actually read this in 8th grade, and I remember this was our summer reading book, and I dreaded reading at this time. So when I heard about this book and we had to read it, and it's only 100 pages, I waited until like the week before school started back up to read this. And when I tell you, I sat down and I read it all in one sitting. I didn't read it just once, but I think I read it 3 times because I love this book so much. And I really think this is what really started my historical fiction journey, is probably this book. And I absolutely loved it. Now, this book takes place towards the end of the war, but this is about a young boy who gets put into Auschwitz and the death march, and just basically what happens in his time from being there. So this is a great read of like a journal from a young boy at the time. Now, this next book is probably the second most popular World War II nonfiction book, The Hiding Place. Now, this is about a woman and her entire family that were trying to help Jews and get them out of Europe or to wherever they needed to for safety. And what is really incredible about this story is that they were very well aware of the risks of this, and they did not care, and they helped absolutely anybody that came through their door. And it was actually a huge operation. And what's crazy is a lot of their neighbors knew exactly what they were doing. And so they knew it was really a matter of time before someone ratted them out of what they were doing. Now, the author, Corrie ten Boom, this follows her specifically, her telling it from her perspective and what her family did to try to save as many people, and then what happens to them after they are caught, which this story, it gets so, so sad. But this is an incredible woman, absolutely incredible woman, endured absolutely a lot, and you can tell she has absolutely no regrets as to what she did. Love it. Now I am saving the absolute best for last. This is my favorite World War II nonfiction that I read years ago, and it is also a hidden gem. The Light in Hidden Places. I have recommended this book to so many people. I also found this one at a thrift store. I never heard of it, and I've never heard of anyone ever talk about it. Now, this is about a young woman who actually works for a Jewish family, so she is not Jewish herself. Now, obviously, when the war starts coming down and Jews are starting to be thrown into the ghetto, she obviously loses her job. But she does not lose her faith in this family that she worked for. So she risks her life as much as she can trying to help the Jews in the ghetto, and this family specifically, trying to save any of them as much as possible. Now, along with that, she also now has to raise her younger sister as well. So not only does she have a little sister to take care of, she also has to try to save as many people as possible while living next door to the enemy as well. She ends up saving several Jews by hiding them in her attic. Great story. Super, super brave woman. I think she was 19 at the time when she did this. I loved this so, so much. So I highly, highly, highly recommend The Light in Hidden Places. So those are my historical fiction, nonfiction, World War II books that I have held on to for years. Some of these I read 4, 5, 6, even 10 years ago that still stick with me to this day. Now, about a month ago, I was like, I really need to read some more of these because I had just burnt myself out so much that I hadn't touched a World War II book in I don't know how many years. But I absolutely loved the Kate Quinn books that I just recently read, Little Liar. So this genre still speaks to me. It is just so many out there that it's very, very hard to narrow down which ones are worth your time and which aren't. So I'm hoping this list absolutely helped you. I hope I have recommended some books that you've never even heard of that you add to your TBR list. Definitely let me know if you've read any of these books. Obviously, if you have any recommendations, comment those as well. And if you love book reviews and recommendations, definitely subscribe to my channel.